Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, providing more than 41,000 jobs in the production of wood pallets, railroad ties, white oak barrels, hardwood floors, and more. Details at choosewood.com.
We hope you enjoy listening to this podcast of St. Louis on the Air, brought to you by University College at Washington University. With undergraduate and graduate programs, part-time, evening, and online. University College at Washington University, offering world-class education within reach.
Welcome to St. Louis on the Air. I'm Don Marsh. Allyn Hinton served as a helicopter pilot in the Marines from 1968 until 1980. He served in combat in Vietnam and again in Desert Storm when his reserve unit was called up. The remainder of his career was spent as a history and government teacher at Parkway South High School. Hinton is a member of the U.S. Marine Combat Helicopter Association and is one of the organizers of its biennial reunion, which takes place next week at Westport Plaza. It's the first time the event has been held in the Midwest. On Tuesday, St. Louis Public Radio reporter Mary Leonard sat down with Hinton to talk with him about his military and teaching careers and the reunion. She asked him how the U.S. Marine Combat Helicopter Association came about.
Well, it actually started with about 6 or 7 former Marine helicopter pilots that had served in Vietnam that went up to Las Vegas in 1986 to get together and just have a good time. And then word got out, and other Marines that had been in the helicopter community started calling them up. Hey, I heard you're holding a reunion. They said, well, not really, but... So in 1988, we had the first one, once again in Las Vegas, and we've been having them every 2 years since then. We also have members that didn't fly or were connected with Marine helicopter operations in Vietnam. We're starting to get members that are coming back from Afghanistan and Iraq. The only requirement to join is you had to serve in a Marine helicopter unit somewhere in a combat zone somewhere in the world anytime, and you're a member. In fact, a short little sidelight here, I met Bill McClellan at a Veterans Day get-together over in St. Charles, and I'd known Bill had served in the Marine Corps. He was there, he was still writing columns for the Post-Dispatch then, so I just one Marine to another, just got talking to him and said, well, who'd you serve with in Vietnam? And he says, well, I was in MAG 16. And I says, well, I was in MAG 16. When were you there? 1970. I says, we were there at the same time, but we didn't know it. He actually worked for the public affairs office there, and his mission was to write stories for this newspaper, the Sea Tiger, they used to put out once a week. And so Bill McClellan from the Post-Dispatch actually flew on some medevac missions and some other missions. So as far as I'm concerned, he's qualified to be a member. He participated in Marine helicopter operations in a combat zone, and that's about the only requirement to join.
Well, tell me about your experiences in Vietnam.
Actually, it was pretty mundane, really. It was like having a job. You got up every day and checked what mission you were assigned to fly, and you went out and flew the mission. Our purpose was solely to support the guys on the ground. I flew the helicopter gunships when we escorted the medevac aircraft and the resupply aircraft, and if somebody started shooting at them, well, we'd shoot back if we could identify where it was coming from. My biggest fear was always that I might accidentally shoot one of our own people, but fortunately that never happened. I flew 920 combat missions, never crashed, never got shot down, never had anybody killed or wounded who went out with me. So actually, sometimes you'd fly for weeks on end and nothing would be going on. I mean, you'd fly the mission. You didn't make contact with the enemy. I mean, the only time we came into play was when we happened to run across them, and pretty much that was pretty few and far between. Now,
where were you based in Vietnam?
I was based at a place called Marble Mountain, which was right there on the South China Sea, a little bit east of the big Da Nang Air Base. All the Marine helicopter units that were based in I Corps at that time were based at Marble Mountain. There were 7 squadrons of Marine helicopters there, all part of Marine Air Group 16.
Tell me about that helicopter you flew. That was a pretty big one, right?
No, actually it was a small one. It was basically a Huey helicopter that they put a couple M60 machine guns and a rocket pod on each side, and then we had a crew chief and a door gunner in the back. So we carried a crew of 4, and as I said, our mission was basically to escort, the transport helicopters. After you loaded the Huey up with 4 people and a full load of fuel and 10,000 rounds of machine gun ammunition we carried, we were pretty much at our max gross weight. Probably couldn't put another person in there without exceeding max gross takeoff weight.
So what does this Papa Smoke mean? I saw on your website. That's actually the website name that you
Right.
You
Well, when you're out there supporting the guys on the ground, you give them a call on your FM radio and try to locate where they're at. So your guy on the ground will give you directions. You ask him, do you see any helicopters in the area? And he'll probably come back and say, yeah, you're down here at my 3 o'clock. So you look out your right window and you got a general idea where he's at. And then we'd ask him to pop a smoke grenade. It's just like a regular grenade, except it doesn't blow up. It'll be either yellow or red or green smoke will come out of it. And it was just a way for the air crew to locate the people on the ground that we were supporting. And then from there, we'd get a briefing from them on the ground. Are you taking fire? Are you, what's the situation? And from there, you'd plot how you were going. Plus, seeing the smoke came up gave you an indication of which way the wind was blowing. So, generally speaking, you try to land the aircraft headed into the wind. Say it was a medevac mission. As the medevac aircraft went in to actually pick up the casualty, we'd orbit. And as I said, if somebody started shooting at them, then we'd try to locate where they were being shot at from and attempt to suppress their fire.
You make it sound like it wasn't scary. There had to be some days when it was a little hairy.
No, I don't ever remember being particularly frightened. I mean, I knew what I signed up for. I went in the Marine Corps officer program while I was in college down at Southeast Missouri State. And when I graduated, they made me a lieutenant in the Marine Corps and sent me to flight school, which is what they'd promised. And by the time I got to Vietnam, I was 27 years old. It wasn't like I was some young kid that just got drafted in and really didn't want to be there.
I think we're all thinking about Vietnam this week with the passing of Senator McCain.
Right.
For you as a Vietnam veteran, is there anything in particular that you'd like to share?
Well, I mean, John McCain was flying A-4s off an aircraft carrier doing bombing missions over North Vietnam when he was shot down, captured, and a POW for 5.5 years. And, his father was the commander of all naval forces in the Pacific. And so he was quite a prize to the North Vietnamese, having captured the son of the top admiral in the Pacific at the time. And, they tried to use him as a bargaining chip. They offered to send him home early. And, of course, he saw it as a propaganda thing. And he said, no, I'll go home in the order in which I was captured. I'm not going to desert my friends. And that right there tells me all I need to know about his character.
So tell me about the reunion. What do you want people in the St. Louis area to know about this reunion?
Well, we just get together and have a good time. They've got some tours scheduled, to take the wives to various places. The guys will, a lot of times just sit around and talk about old things. And, of course, sometimes the more the story gets told, the better it gets. But then again, I try very hard to not embellish any actual events, just keep it low-key. We get together. We have a buffet dinner on Thursday night there, and then Friday night, each individual squadron has their own squadron reunion. I've set that up for my squadron. We're going to be out at PO's on Friday night out in St. Charles at the restaurant. And then the big dinner that Saturday evening, Marine Reserve from St. Louis will provide the color guard. We've got guest speakers, and we just tend to have a good time.
I see you're wearing your USMC T-shirt.
Well,
is that your uniform now that you're retired?
Yeah, it's the only thing I own. I own about 50 of these.
Seriously?
Well, see, the one thing I liked about being in the military was, you didn't have to get up in the morning and worry about what you were going to wear. You put on whatever uniform, put on the uniform of the day. For the year I was in Vietnam, I basically lived in a flight suit.
Tell me about teaching. You taught high school, right?
Right. I taught U.S. history and government at Parkway South High School for 28 years, from 1980 till I retired in 2008.
Did your Marine training help?
One of the things that, particularly as an officer in the Marine Corps, they impress upon you very early on that, you have to evaluate whatever situation arises and just deal with it. The whole idea is to try to create order out of chaos. In fact, I got an interesting story. I'd been through the jungle survival school and a couple other survival schools in my life, and one day in my freshman history class, there was a commotion in the back of the room, right? And these 3 girls were back there, and one of them had actually gotten, was standing up in her chair, and they're, so I go back to see what the heck's going on, and there's a little bug crawling across the carpet, and, they're acting like, so I said, is this what's causing the problem? And they said, yeah, Mr. Hinton, and everything. So I just reached down, picked the bug up off the carpet and popped it in my mouth and ate it in front of them. And, of course, by the end of the day, that little tiny bug had grown into about a 6-inch cockroach, and the grapevine in the school had pretty much every person that retells a story has to add their own little bit of to it, so it grows out of sight. Occasionally I'd have to stop a fight or something between a couple of young men or something, and just go down there and.
What was harder, being a Marine combat helicopter pilot or teaching high school?
Actually, I don't think either one of them was that tough a job. Know what you were getting into.
You were telling me about James Edward, is it Magle?
James Magle, right. He was one of the first Marine helicopter pilots to die in Vietnam. His hometown is listed as Limay, Missouri. At that point, we hadn't committed ground troops to Vietnam. That didn't happen until the end of March 1965. And up to that point, their Marine helicopters had been flying in Vietnam since '62, but generally they were hauling South Vietnamese here and there hadn't been much contact because it was really a guerrilla war. It wasn't, it was basically a lot of hit and run things, a lot of putting people down, looking for folks that you can't seem to find. It so happened that there was a Life magazine photojournalist that was decided to go out on a mission with the Marine helicopter unit HMM 163 that was putting some South Vietnamese troops in the field. So he's taking pictures and getting his story, to put into Life magazine. Well, In this particular instance, when they landed in the zone to drop the South Vietnamese soldiers off, they started taking fire, and James was flying as a co-pilot, and he got hit. The other aircraft, they managed to get his body out of the aircraft and the rest of the crew, but anyway, his picture of him as he's being flown out, it was on the cover of Life magazine along with the story. The issue of Life magazine was one of the early April. It was like the first or second issue in April 1965. And by that time, we had started to escalate because we were trying to win the war. And, it kind of reached its peak in 1968, but by that time, it wasn't just the local Viet Cong that you were dealing with. The North Vietnamese were sending their regular army troops down into South Vietnam.
After Vietnam, or even during Vietnam when the troops were coming back, there wasn't a whole lot of accolades.
In my case, I didn't expect it. You hear these stories about, they spit on me when I got off the airplane and everything. And my experience was I came out of Vietnam, got back to the United States on the 19th of December, 1970. We landed at Norton Air Force Base in San Bernardino, California. I was in my uniform, rode the bus down to Los Angeles International Airport, got my plane ticket back home to Missouri, and, nobody gave me any problem. Nobody, generally, I think that most people in America probably wanted to see the war end, and sometimes a small group of people that want to make a statement can cause a commotion that seems to make people believe that this is happening everywhere, when in reality it's usually just a handful of people that are trying to do something to get attention themselves or make a statement for whatever their cause is.
Anything else you'd like to say? You say former Marines, actually, once a Marine, always a Marine, right? Excuse me. Come on down to the reunion, right?
Yes, even if you're not a member of Papa Smoke, you just want to stop by and say hi and everything. You might run into, as I said, we're starting to get people in the association that have done tours of duty in Afghanistan and Iraq. So, you might run into somebody you know.
Mr. Hinton, Captain Hinton, congratulations on the reunion. Thank you for your service. I hope it all goes well.
Oh, I'm sure it will.
That was retired Marine helicopter pilot Allyn Hinton in a conversation with St. Louis Public Radio reporter Mary Leonard. The Papa Smoke reunion of the U.S. Marine Combat Helicopter Association takes place September 5th through the 9th at the Westport Sheraton Hotel. You can find more information at stlpublicradio.org/STL on Air. This is St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio, 90.7 KWMU.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, providing more than 41,000 jobs in the production of wood pallets, railroad ties, white oak barrels, hardwood floors, and more. Details at choosewood.com.